Hello viewers, here we are then with a bit more WRC generations. This time it's going to be a comparison across PS5, Xbox and PC. You can see here, we'll come back to this in just a moment and work our way through the different versions, having a look at those. So this is a very brief look at them. There's no detailed analysis here. I haven't had the time to really analyze every aspect of stages. I've gone to Chile to check out first. Why? Because it's got nice colors, the greens, the detailed textures. It's easy to see between the different versions and different lighting conditions, and this rally does sort of stand out because it's also a heavy foliage rally. Foliage is probably one of the key things that determine between the different versions. Now you're going to see the Xbox and PS5 version running on the performance mode, the 2K60. The PC version will be running in high graphical settings, not the very highest, but high graphical settings, and it gives you an idea of how the different versions look in the main. The PC version is powered by a GTX 1080, so not the most powerful graphics card in the world, but I happen to think it's a good benchmark by which the console versions should be rated. And in many ways, I kind of feel that if you can get this out of a GTX 1080, a graphics card that's 5 years old, that the new consoles should be more than up to the task of maximizing that performance as well. I've looked at a couple of sections. This high speed section you see here is good for seeing the LODs in the distance, and that's a good comparison. And then you have the ground textures from the bumper cam, as well as a close look at the rock textures and general foliage. And then onto the Xbox Series X. Now, seeing them all full screen in the main, it's not easy to initially see the difference. In fact, it's very subtle in terms of the foliage and colour in general. The Xbox Series X version looks very close to the PC. The PS5 version looks a little bit more washed out. There's a few more LODs in there changing. What am I talking about, LODs? I'm talking about trees and bushes and small things in the distance that you see popping sometimes, where they change from the distant LOD to the slightly closer one, and they haven't integrated those as well as they should have. So a comparison between the PC version and the PS5 version, and it's all very subtle. If you take a look at the red, for example, on the car, you can see they're just a little bit richer on the PC, and you'll see that generally the greenery, the foliage is a little bit denser. There's just a little bit, generally it's just a richer image detail wise, but it's very subtle between the two. I'm also going to be doing some analysis on handling between the different versions. Running here on the dirt of Chile, you can see that the cars are pretty much neck and neck. I can't say when I was playing I noticed any major difference between the two at all. The difference just being the driving itself. But besides that, both versions were working very well. And so if you're on the cross-play leaderboards, you can see here everything seems to be working normally. Obviously on this particular demo I've not been able to test the Xbox version because I'm using a controller on that, and I didn't have time to practice with the controller. I literally turned on my wheel, it didn't work, put on the controller, and again just seeing that close up from the ground shot with the various textures. I always like to see the ground textures. They give such a wonderful feeling of speed. You know, in video game terms, we went through many years where the ground textures under the car itself were the least worked on aspect of games. It's nice to see over the last generation where we started to see improved ground textures, and it really makes so much difference. This is why when I talk about the tarmac textures on Spain, and I was mentioning how there was a lack of tarmac detail, you can see what I wanted when you look at this dirt detail, you know, the patches of tarmac, the different elements. So Xbox versus PS5 then, well, first main tests I guess for the console gamers, both running in the performance mode, and they're both pretty similar. Yes, I used a different car on the Xbox One. My intention was to use all the different cars, but I didn't get around to it, so we had to go with this. So in the main though, we're looking at the backgrounds, the foliage, the cars look fine. It does seem that there's, and I'm saying this on my monitor because that can make a difference. I'm using it in my editing window. It does seem to be a slightly richer colour tint to the Xbox version. You know, it's funny, it's much easier to see when it's actually on YouTube and I have it on a brighter screen. I use a very dark screen for video editing, but it works well there. In terms of general detail in the main, very hard to see any real difference offhand without a detailed analysis. The PC version again still has marginally more foliage, and again in pausing that you'll see the difference between the two, and I haven't gone to that level of analysis here today, but for those of you who are interested to know the comparison, you can see it both there. And again, the Xbox version shares a similar issue with the odd LODs, the odd bushes to the side, the odd trees, the LODs changing a little bit here and there. Just polish issues really in terms of development. In the main, it's all there and looking good. And the developers are taking on board lots of your feedback now to work on various improvements. So just small LOD issues on bushes, there's a few lighting artifacts on different rallies. It just needs a bit more testing and noting on those. Using the control pad, I was losing a little bit with the rear end on the Xbox version. We'll see the full stage now between the three cars. So I restarted a couple of times with a pad just to get the first section right. I thought, well, at least we know we can drive it pretty much with a pad. Nice and clear. I went a bit wide there, didn't I? So I'm a little bit behind, but you know, you get it right. Anyway, the three versions look pretty similar. Now you can see that color gradient between the PS5 and the PC, and how the Xbox sits somewhere in the middle between the two. If you look into the distance after the long straight, we'll come to that soon actually, I'll point out some minor changes there. But in the main, just a bit more in the way of trees and foliage on the Xbox version. Not the Xbox, sorry, the PC version. And the Xbox seems to sit neatly between the two. Now, games like this are always difficult to showcase on YouTube if you're not running them in full 4K video quality. Why? And you'll see this a lot on streams. I've seen people complaining about the quality of people's streams. There's a lot of detail in Rally, and that creates a high bit rate, high amount of data on the screen, and so that can pixelate. So when you have smooth surfaces such as the one we're on now, you'll find that that can pixelate more on YouTube, and it is very difficult to determine absolute detail when it comes to textures. I fall a bit off the track here on the Xbox version. So cheerio Xbox, see you later. And that's that. But either way, the other two versions, let's look into the distance on the PS5. Looking at the distance on the PS5, top left, you'll see logs and bits and pieces popping into view, and then boom, they're all there. Whereas on the PC version, I did rewind it several times. It happens, but it's a way back and you don't notice it so much, and there's another tree in the way. So there's just little changes between the two versions, but nothing necessarily that changes the fundamentals. My next test there'll be some more looking at different stages and looking at any details that I highlight in particular with significant issues. But my main issue will be looking at the handling to see that the handling is the same across all versions. There are some aspects on some textures where it doesn't necessarily feel the same to me in terms of PlayStation and PC, but I can't run tests on that till I've done a lot more analysis, and maybe there'll be patches and improvements that will change that by the time we get there. So that's it. I'm going to leave you with this last bit of gameplay to the end. You'll see me losing it and crashing and disasters happening later in the stage. And do let me know in your feedback. What are you thinking so far playing the game? Thank you for all the feedback on the Xbox video. I have forwarded that to the developers, and they are welcome to read those comments and hopefully do something about them. But that's it from me for now. As ever, more soon.